When my mother died, the house felt different. Not empty, just quieter than it had ever been before. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears. The kind that makes even your own breathing sound too loud. I stood alone in her kitchen that morning. The same kitchen where she had spent most of her life. The kettle was still on the stove, cold, forgotten. I held a cup of tea in my hands, but I did not drink it. I could not feel its warmth anymore. People think grief arrives loudly, with crying and shaking and falling apart. But for me, it arrived like silence. Heavy, still, unmoving. That was the day everything began to change. Not because my mother died, but because her death finally opened a door that had been locked my whole life. A door I never knew existed. I grew up believing my family was normal. Not perfect, but steady. We were not rich. We were not poor. We had. Our house was small. 2 bedrooms. A narrow hallway. A living room that smelled like old books and clean floors. And a kitchen that always felt warm, even in winter. My mother was a quiet woman. She did not speak much, but when she did, people listened. Her voice was soft, but firm. She believed in doing things properly, at the right time, in the right way. My father died when I was very young, so young that I do not remember his face clearly. Only fragments, a shadow near the doorway, a deep voice in the distance, a strong hand lifting me once. After he died, my mother became everything, both parents, both protector and provider. She raised 3 children alone, my older brother, my younger sister, and me. I was the middle one, not the one who carried responsibility. Not the one who needed protection, just the one in between. As children, we shared the same. Meals, wore hand-me-down clothes, sat on the same floor to do homework. From the outside, no one would have guessed anything was different. But inside our home, there was a feeling I could never name. My brother was confident. He spoke freely, he argued. He laughed loudly. My sister was gentle. Everyone worried about her. Everyone watched over her. And me? I learned early how to stay quiet. How to observe instead of speak. How to step back instead of step forward. I was never scolded harshly, but I was rarely praised. When guests came, my mother would say, "This is my son," proudly pointing to my brother. "And this is my daughter," smiling at my sister. Then she would say my name. Just my name. No title, no explanation. I told myself it meant nothing. Children are good at convincing themselves that pain is normal. There were moments, small moments, that stayed with. When relatives asked who I looked like, my mother would smile politely and change the subject. When stories about my father were shared, my brother and sister were included. I listened from the side. Once, when I was around 12, I gathered courage and asked her. "Emmy," I said, sitting beside her while she folded clothes, "did Abu love me too?" Her hands stopped moving, just for a second. Then she said, "Yes," but she did not look at me. That answer followed me into adulthood. Years passed. I studied. I worked. I married. I became a parent myself. And still, the distance remained. Whenever I visited my mother, I felt like a guest. A welcomed guest, but a guest nonetheless. She loved my children deeply. That much was clear. She held them close, kissed their foreheads, prayed for them every night. With me, she was kind, but careful, as if she was afraid of saying the wrong thing. Sometimes I thought I imagined it. Other times, I wondered if I had done something wrong. I never confronted her. Some questions feel too dangerous to ask, because once spoken, they can never be taken back. Then she fell ill. It did not happen suddenly. Her strength faded slowly. Her steps became smaller, her breath shorter. Doctors spoke in calm voices, used gentle words, but I understood what they meant. Time was running out. I visited her every day during the last month. I fed her with my own hands. I wiped her face. I adjusted her pillows at night. Sometimes she stared at me for a long time. Her eyes filled with something heavy. Regret, fear, love. I could not tell. More than once, she opened her mouth as if she wanted to speak, then closed it again. I wanted to ask her everything, but I did not. Answers. On her last night, the house was quiet again. I sat beside her bed, holding her hand. Her skin felt thinner than I remembered. She squeezed my fingers gently. She whispered my name. I leaned closer. Yes, Ummi. Her lips moved. No sound came out. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she turned her face away. Before sunrise, she was gone. The funeral passed like a blur. People came. 3 people cried. People prayed. After the last guest left, the house felt hollow. That evening, my brother asked me to sit with him and my sister in the living room. His voice was serious. There's something we need to tell you, he said. I thought it was about paperwork, or inheritance, or responsibilities. I was wrong. She twisted my eyes nervously. My brother took a deep breath. You were not Abu's biological child, he said quietly. The room spun. I laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because my mind refused to accept it. What do you mean? I asked. My brother continued, carefully. Ummi had you before she married him. The words settled slowly. Every memory shifted. Every silence spoke. Every unanswered question found its meaning. I did not cry. I just sat there, listening, understanding. That night, I lay awake in my childhood room. The ceiling looked the same, but I was not. I finally understood why love always felt careful, why affection always came with distance. My mother loved me, but she loved me while carrying a secret so heavy it shaped my entire life. And now, that secret was mine. That night, sleep did not come easily. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling fan, watching it turn slowly in the dim light. Every sound felt louder than before. The ticking of the clock, the distant bark of a dog, my own breathing. I kept replaying my brother's words in my mind. You were not Abu's biological child. Each time I thought about it, the words felt different. Sometimes heavy, sometimes unreal, sometimes sharp. I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to calm myself. I was not angry. Not yet. I felt something else, something deeper. I felt like my life had quietly shifted, and I did not know where I stood anymore. The next morning, I woke up early. The house was still. My siblings were asleep. The air felt thick, like it was holding something unsaid. I went into the kitchen, the same kitchen where my mother once stood every morning. I opened the cupboard and took out A cup. Her favorite one. The one with a small crack near the handle. As I made tea, memories came back without warning. My mother standing at the stove, her back to me. The way she always asked my brother if he wanted more sugar. The way she reminded my sister to eat slowly. And the way she simply placed a cup in front of me. Not unkindly, just quietly. I sat at the table and finally cried. Not loudly, not dramatically. Tears fell slowly into my cup of tea. I cried for the child I once was. The child who tried to be good enough without knowing why it always felt difficult. Later that day, I spoke to my brother alone. We sat in the living room, the curtains half closed. Dust floated in the sunlight. He looked tired, older than I remembered. "How long did you know?" I asked. He took a moment before answering. "Since I was young," he said. "Emmy told me when I was old. Enough to understand." "And my sister?" I asked. "She knew too," he replied softly. I nodded. "So I was the only one who didn't know," I said. "Yes," he admitted. The truth settled between us. I did not blame him. He did not choose this secret, but I could not stop the ache in my chest. "Why didn't she tell me?" I asked quietly. My brother lowered his head. "She was afraid," he said. "She feared you would leave. Or hate her. Or feel ashamed." I closed my eyes. She feared losing me. And in trying to protect me, she kept me at a distance. That afternoon, I walked through the house slowly. Every room felt familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. In my old bedroom, I opened the cupboard where my childhood things were kept. Old notebooks, school certificates, a small box of photographs. I sat on the floor and looked through them one by one. There was a photo of my brother as a baby, held proudly by my mother. Another of my sister, wrapped in a soft blanket, my mother smiling wide. Then there was a photo of me. I was about 4 years old, standing alone. My mother beside me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. She was smiling, but it was not the same smile I had never noticed before. As the day passed, memories began to rearrange themselves. Moments I once dismissed suddenly carried meaning. Way she hesitated when signing school forms. The way she avoided family gatherings that included people from before her marriage. The way she always corrected anyone who spoke too freely about the past. She was guarding something. And that something was me. That realization brought pain, but also understanding. That evening, my sister came to sit with me. She looked nervous, guilty. "I wanted to tell you," she said softly. "So many times." I nodded. "I know," I replied. She reached for my hand. "She loved you," my sister said, in her own way. I squeezed her hand gently. "I know," I said again. And this time I meant it. But knowing did not make the pain disappear. That night, questions filled my mind. Who was my biological father? Did he know about me? Did he ever think of me? I wanted answers. But my mother was gone, and with her, the truth she never found the courage to say. In the days that followed, relatives returned to offer condolences. They spoke kindly. They praised my mother. I smiled politely. All the while, I wondered, did they know? Did they look at me differently? No one said anything, and I realized something important. To the world, nothing had changed, but inside me, everything had. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, I spoke to my mother in my thoughts. "Why didn't you trust me?" I whispered. The room gave no answer, but slowly, another thought came. Maybe she trusted me too much. Maybe she believed I was strong enough to live without the truth. That thought hurt, but it also softened something inside me. I began to see her differently, not just as my mother, but as a woman who made choices under pressure, a woman who carried shame in silence, a woman who loved fiercely, but carefully. She protected me the only way she knew how, by keeping a secret. As days passed, my grief changed shape. It was no longer just about losing my mother. It was about losing the story I believed about myself. I felt unsteady, like I needed to rebuild my identity from the ground up. But slowly, quietly, I reminded myself of something important. I was still me, the same person who loved deeply, the same person who tried to do right, the same person who became a parent, a sibling, a human being. A secret could explain my past, but it did not define my worth. That understanding did not come all at once. It arrived slowly, in moments of silence, in late-night thoughts, in memories that finally made sense. And in those moments, I felt my mother closer than ever before. Not as a distant figure, but as a woman who loved me enough to protect me, even when it cost her closeness. After the first shock faded, a strange emptiness settled inside me. It was not loud grief anymore. It was quiet confusion. I woke up every morning with the same questions sitting in my chest. Who am I, really? I had lived my whole life believing one story about myself. Now that story had changed, and I did not know where to place the pieces. I did not rush to find answers. At first, I was too tired, too full of thoughts. Instead, I stayed in my mother's house for a few more days. I moved slowly, carefully, as if the walls themselves were listening. One afternoon, I decided to clean her room. Not because it needed cleaning, but because I needed to feel close to her. Her cupboard still smelled like her. A mix of soap, old fabric, and something familiar I could never name. I folded her clothes gently, one by one. As I worked, memories rose quietly. Her sitting on the edge of the bed, brushing her hair. Her standing in front of the mirror, fixing her scarf. Her turning slightly away whenever I entered. I understood now. She was not hiding from me. She was hiding the truth. At the back of the cupboard, I found a small wooden box. I had never seen it before. It was simple, worn at the edges, locked. For a moment, I hesitated. Some things feel private, even after death. But something inside me said this box was meant for me. I opened it. Inside were old papers, a faded scarf, and a few folded letters. My hands trembled as I picked one up. The paper was thin, yellowed with age. The handwriting was my mother's. The letter was short. She wrote about fear, about mistakes, about love that did not fit into society's rules. She did not name my biological father, but she wrote one sentence that stayed with me. I loved you. Before I knew how to protect you. Tears fell onto the paper. That was the first time she had spoken to me so honestly, even if it was too late. Over the next few days, I read all the letters. They were not addressed to anyone. They were written like thoughts she never shared. She wrote about the shame she felt, the fear of being judged, the relief she felt when she married my father. She wrote about loving all her children equally, but differently. With you, she wrote, I loved you in silence because noise would have destroyed us both. That sentence stayed with me. I did not feel anger. I felt sadness. Sadness for her. Sadness for myself. We both paid a price for a secret we did not create together. That evening, I took the box into the living room. My siblings sat with me as I shared what I found. They listened quietly. My sister cried. My brother looked away. I did not know she wrote these, he said. I nodded. She never wanted anyone to know, I replied. Not even him. Later that night, I thought about my biological father. Not with bitterness, but with curiosity. Did he know about me? Did he ever think of the child my mother carried? I realized something important. Even if I never knew his name, his absence did not define me. I was shaped by the woman who raised me, by her choices, by her strength. She was my parent in every way that mattered. In the days that followed, I returned to my own home. Life did not pause for grief. Children needed meals. Work needed attention. Days passed. But something inside me had shifted. I felt softer, more aware, more forgiving. One evening, as I watched my own children sleep, I understood my mother better. Love is not always brave. Sometimes it is careful. Sometimes it is quiet. She did the best she could with the fear she carried. And in that moment, I forgave her completely. I did not forgive her because she was perfect. I forgave her because she was human. And so was I. As the weeks passed, life slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Not the same normal as before. A quieter one. A more thoughtful one. I no longer woke up with panic in my chest. Instead, I woke up with questions that felt softer. Questions that did not demand answers right away. I began to understand that healing does not happen suddenly. It moves slowly, like a shadow, following you through the day. One afternoon, my brother visited me alone. We sat on the balcony, watching the sky change colors as the sun began to set. I worry about you, he said finally. I smiled faintly. You don't need to, I replied. I'm learning how to live with it. He nodded. She loved you, he said again, as if repeating it might ease the past. I know, I said, and I don't blame you for keeping her secret. He looked relieved. That secret protected our family, he said quietly. And it cost her peace, I replied. We both sat in silence after that. Not uncomfortable silence, understanding silence. Later, I spoke with my sister. She hugged me tightly, longer than usual. I wish I could have been braver, she said. You were a child too, I told her. We all were. In that moment, I felt closer to them than ever before. Truth, when finally spoken, has a way of bringing people together. I visited my mother's grave for the first time alone. The cemetery was quiet. Birds chirped softly in the distance. I sat beside her grave and placed my hand on the cool stone. I understand now, I whispered. I understand why you stayed silent. The wind moved gently through the trees. For the first time, I felt peace instead of pain. At home, I began sharing small parts of my story with my children. Not everything. Just enough. I told them about honesty, about kindness, about how families are built by love, not by blood alone. They listened without judgment. Children often understand more than we think. One evening, as I cooked dinner, I caught myself doing something my mother used to do. I paused, smiled. She lived on in small ways, in habits, in gestures, in quiet strength. I stopped asking why my life was different and started asking what I could do with the life I had. That shift changed everything. With time, the sharp edges of the truth softened. The secret no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a scar. Still there, but no longer painful. I began to notice how much strength it took for my mother to live the life she lived. How much courage it took to wake up every day and choose love over fear. She did not have the language to explain her choices. She lived in a world where mistakes followed women forever, where silence felt safer than honesty. I stopped judging her through my pain and started seeing her through her reality. One morning, I stood in front of the mirror and looked at my own face. I searched for resemblance, for answers written into my features. Then I smiled. This face had lived a full life. It had laughed. It had cried. It had loved deeply. It did not need explanation. I realized something important during that quiet moment. I was not broken by I was completed by it. For the first time, my story made sense. The loneliness, the sensitivity, the independence I learned too early. None of it was weakness. It was survival. Weeks later, my family gathered for dinner. Nothing fancy, just simple food, simple conversation. At one point, my brother looked at me and said, "I'm glad you stayed." I understood what he meant. He was not talking about the house or the city. He was talking about the family. I smiled and nodded. "So am I replied. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone at the table. I thought about how easily secrets destroy families when they are carried alone, and how gently they heal when they are finally shared. My mother carried hers until the very end. I carried mine forward, but differently. I made a quiet promise to myself. I would not pass silence down to my children. I would not protect them with half-truths. I would give them honesty wrapped in love. Because love grows stronger in light, not darkness. Sometimes, late at night, I still talk to my mother in my thoughts. I tell her about my days, about the children, about the peace I found. I imagine her listening, quiet, gentle, finally at rest. If I could speak to her now, I would say this: "You did not fail me. You raised me the best way you knew how, and I forgive you. Not because forgiveness was required, but because love deserves it." Life did not change suddenly after that, but I did. I walked lighter, breathed deeper. I stopped asking for permission to belong. I already did. Some people believe family is defined by blood. I know now that family is defined by who stays, who protects, who loves, even imperfectly. My mother stayed. She loved. And that was enough. If you are listening to this and carrying a secret of your own, I want you to know something. You are not alone. Your story does not end with the truth. It begins there. After my mother died, our family secret finally came out. And instead of breaking me, it finally set me free.